You can start now.
Hello, I would like to welcome you to the third meeting in our webinar in the series BSBI Dialogues, hosted by the Berlin School of Business and Innovation, BSBI. I'm Professor Kyriakos Kouveliotis. I'm also the Provost and Chief Academic Officer of the Berlin School of Business and Innovation. And today's webinar has to do with the changes that we observed in education lately, and more specifically, has education changed forever? What is the impact of the current global health crisis, the impact of COVID-19? This is an issue that it's in the minds of everybody in the world right now. And as education is something like a global commodity, you can say, a lot of us are concerned of what is going to happen. What were the changes that are already imposed? What are the next steps? Where education is going? And for all these issues and for all these topics, I have the pleasure to introduce you my colleagues. Boris, who is the founder and CEO of SGM Educational Solutions, and Andrea, Pfeil, who is the Director of Language Program and Deputy Executive Director of Goethe-Institut in New York. We will try and have a very open and vivid conversation, all of us, and we will start gradually presenting our own views and opinions on these issues. And the agenda that we'll have for today, and these are the main 4 topics that we will discuss. Starting with speaking generally about the impact of COVID-19 on international education. Then we move toward presenting the current higher education opportunities after COVID-19, so the aftermath, and let's say something like a SWOT analysis on this. Then we will move towards the future of online and blended learning, and we will conclude with some thoughts regarding the education of the future, how this situation changes universities, what is going to be the new structure and the new norms that universities will adopt. So can we actually talk about a university of the future out of this process? Maybe there's some of us arguing that this public health crisis actually forwarded all the developments faster than in the past. Following this reference, Andrea, would like to ask you to just start commenting and discussing all these excellent things that you have prepared. So on you now.
Thank you. And a good morning from New York, where I join you still from my home because New York is still pretty much in lockdown. We just started reopening New York City yesterday, in fact, but for education, it will still be a long way to go, and it will probably still be until September, where we can then think about reopening the Goethe-Institut, but also schools and other educational organizations. So my name is Andrea Pfeil, and I am the director of the Goethe-Institut here in New York in the language department, and I've been in New York for six years now, working obviously with New Yorkers on how to learn German, support German in New York, but also work with teachers in the United States, supporting them to be able to run a German program and set up new German programs in the US. So when I was asked to participate in this webinar, Has Education Changed Forever? I was actually, first of all, a bit, this is a big question. And I thought maybe the best way to approach this question is to take a look at the current affairs in the United States and ask teachers how they feel about the situation, and do they think education has changed forever, whatever that means. So I did ask teachers through Facebook, and got some feedback which I found very useful to describe what's going on in the secondary education system here in the United States, and then hopefully I will be able to draw some conclusions from that for our discussion here about education and the future of, or the positive impact of education through this crisis. So when I ask teachers, they are teachers of German, and they generally work in public high schools in the United States. One of the teachers said that, and I quote here, "I do not believe that remote learning will become the primary means of education in the future." The background of the traditional classroom setting, as she describes in her quote, is much more than just a learning environment. It provides students with so much more in general. And I think I'm not only speaking for the United States here, but for primary and secondary education in general. It is a place where children are safe, hopefully, and they get often in the United States, this place where they get support, where they get food, where they can spend time when their parents are at work, which is mostly the case here. And moreover, here from the quote, social skills are learned, says this teacher, better in a class environment. So school as such is more than just providing knowledge and information. It gives students a sort of a second home, and I think this is also what you can hear from students at the moment. They actually, even though they hate school, they do really miss school at the moment, and they miss going to school. Yeah, so I think I can even go a step further, and if you could go to the next slide, please, then, because I don't think I can move on with the slides. One of the teachers, and I also think that reflects the current situation in the US and all over the world. I think this crisis has also revealed the inequality that comes with that is in the system, and this crisis has made it even more obvious that there are disparities in our educational system. And there are some, or obviously in the United States, there are students in tough living situations, and for them this crisis has been disconnecting them from school, from being in a social context with their classmates, and it has through the lack of the infrastructure and the reliable internet, but also the devices students might not have, it has had a very negative impact on a big group of students who are not able to just like we do log on to nice computers and participate in online teaching equally. So there's another, I think, aspect of this crisis has always been there, of course, but now it's a lot more in the open. And when I speak to teachers, they often say, I've lost so many students. Yeah, they are just, I cannot even talk to them because they have to look after their siblings, or they have to share one computer with other kids in the school. So there is that part of our status quo in at least the education system here, but I think that's probably something that's also happening, or I hear from Germany or from other countries as well, that the fact that we were as educators not well prepared to cope with that situation in such a pace, yeah, from one day to the next, to provide that kind of service to our students. But and this is now hopefully more the positive aspect of it. So if we go to the next slide, I can talk about the more the fact that apart from the challenges teachers and students face, they all agree on the opportunities they have now through virtual instructions. They all can see, if they do have access, they all can see that there are things they have not used or integrated in their teaching before, and they now can enhance their teaching with here in this example with, for instance, guest speakers from Germany in their German classes. So this is something they could have obviously done before too, but now they were forced to rethink, how do I make my class more interesting? How do I make it so students will actually come back to my class and participate? And we see that they come up with great creative ideas, and they can open up their classroom to a lot more than they were able to before, when it was only a face-to-face setting. So here's one example of our program here we developed also at the Goethe-Institut. It's a virtual exchange program where we have in the United States, we have a big exchange German academic exchange program where we have 9,000 students from the US and Germany exchanging every year. It's a physical exchange, and as you can imagine, there is absolutely no physical exchange. This year, students cannot travel to Germany or vice versa, and we have now set up a virtual exchange to be able to still get them to have a little bit of that experience, to be able to look into their German partners, life in their school situation, and exchange ideas of how they lead their lives. So there are ways of doing it, and there is a lot of innovation happening since students and teachers and obviously organizations have realized how much potential there is and how it can be used. So to conclude my presentation, I think I would like to share another quote by one of the teachers I have asked, and I think probably the common ground we can all see as a long-lasting change is that the new opportunities should be preserved, and they should sort of merged with the physical classroom, where we still find it is important to have that face-to-face interaction. So we think the blended learning approach is something that should hopefully provide a sustainable new format for students in pretty much all school types. Yeah, we're always talking about education in general, but it obviously is a big difference if I'm talking about primary school or higher education. But this approach is something I think all teachers and educators can agree on, that you can merge both worlds and bring together what both worlds have to offer. So you can open up your classroom through virtual exchanges and virtual interaction, but at the same time, you have hopefully soon have the face-to-face interaction in a classroom where you can also interact in a different way. And I think on my last slide, I would like to summarize what what are important criteria. It is really difficult to summarize all that in 10 minutes, because it's obviously a big approach and a new concept as well. But as you can see here, I think aspects of equitable education have to be in the center of our discussion. How can it be so that all students can access, and it's not in a technical sense, but also in an educational sense, too involved for students, that it is not a hurdle there that students cannot participate because they don't have the devices or the infrastructure. It also, and I think a blended learning approach reflects that really well, it should also include all skills when we talk about language teaching, of course, but also, as one of the teachers mentioned, social skills. Yeah, you can obviously learn social interaction online as well, but if you also have the face-to-face sessions or meetings, then you have both worlds. Yeah, you have the digital and the analog world that can be combined. We also, I think, talk finally even more about the flipped classroom approach. I know it's nothing new. It's been around for a long time, but it's always, I think, often been misunderstood. That it is just leaving students alone and they have to do it all by themselves. I think that finally that approach gets a bit more known, and the advantages of the flipped classroom approach are a bit better understood. I think there's still quite a bit of work to do here to change the idea that the teachers have to provide the information and they can only do that in a classroom setting. I think there's still a lot of work to do. That also brings me to my next point, which I think is really important. It is always about a learner-centered teaching, and I think for students and teachers, it is often a big step to get away from I sit back and listen to what my teacher tells me and then I do my homework, to be more part of the educational process. And I think that takes a lot of evaluation from the students to understand what learning actually means and how learning feels like. I often, when I talk to students, they think, I haven't learned anything, and I can see they have learned a lot, but they don't understand, or they can't see where their progress was, or how they can visualize progress. I also find, and then I'm almost finished. I warned you I could talk about this topic forever, so you have to stop me. But I think creativity is a major part in this whole rethinking of how do we teach. I took here you can see I took a picture of my son's desk, and this is what he does while he's supposed to be in his online class. He just starts drawing, and I think mainly because he feels that, it's not interesting. It's still the same idea of teaching is being used in online teaching, even though it's a totally different environment, and teaching has to change according to that environment. I can't expect that a metaphor, that I can't expect a penguin to fly, but it's a perfect swimmer. I have to change the way I teach according to the environment I'm in, and I think that's something that has to also be looked at in a more creative way. So there is more interaction, and it's not just a one-way street where teachers provide information and students basically fill out worksheets and take a photograph and send it in again. So it has to be a more, let's say, task-based or project-based approach. I think the blended learning approach is one that is sustainable, and we can hopefully talk about what you think about this, and hopefully find more definitions of what it actually means to when we talk about blended learning, because I find now often everybody says, oh, we do blended learning now, and I think I'm not sure if we're all talking about the same thing when it is blended learning. So I would like to open the discussion to you and see what you think about blended learning as the way forward in education.
Okay, thank you very much for this, Andrea. Three things I can say. First of all, your son is extremely talented. you are also amazingly motivated towards all this, and I had this this sense. And also regarding what you mentioned for a flipped classroom, which is also very important, and I agree completely. Actually, I think that the current public health crisis helped a lot towards the concept of what we call self-paced learning. And as you probably know, in primary, secondary, and also in tertiary education, all students, they learn with a different pace. So by letting them absorb the material and understand on their own mechanism what and if they understood all the concepts, gives more times to educators and people like us to have the opportunity to discuss with them and interact with them and solve their questions and answer their queries, which makes this kind of relationship much more productive. And this is one of the effects that Fleet Classroom had during this last few months. And I'm very excited on this because that also start moving towards higher education as well. So now we feel much more productive in our Zoom or any other teleconference meeting with the students, especially when they have studied the material before and now they talk to each other, they talk to us, and they feel even much more relaxed than sometimes than in the classroom environment. So I can also talk a lot, so I'd better move to Boris. So Boris, on you, what's your opinion on all this?
Well, thank you so much. First of all, thanks a lot for having me here to BSBI. Andrea, I think there's a million of possible points where me trying to make money out of good things for the future and for now as SGM Educational Solutions, located and based in Berlin, but with subsidiaries in Southeastern and Southwestern Europe, with customers like the Fraunhofer Society, who work for the World Volleyball Federation. So it's not only academia, as you may see. We come basically, I come from the background of academia. My native education, I'm a software engineer actually, and I try to flip sides. We have customers like the European Institute of Technology, who we provide courses for. We have been working in over 30 disciplines. And just to get that a little bit shortened up, you both mentioned something, and Professor Kyriakos, you just said something which is, I think, the best hook to start. What we are doing here is what actually is the little dropout of your son drawing beautiful pictures. We have synchronous communication, which means if somebody's sitting in front of me in reality, or somebody's listening to me actually remotely, there's no difference, because you're all well-educated people, and it might not be very nice to just simply turn the line off saying, shut up, Boris, this is too much for me. Now, if you have asynchronous learning, and this is very much the self-paced learning approach, like whatever happened 5 to 6 years ago in MOOCs, then you find that you can easily lose your customer, be it a pupil, be it a student. And if you go to vocational, just to make a little bridge to blended learning, you will never be able to teach somebody healthcare as a career without having blended, because some patients have to be actually touched, treated, and you need haptics, olfactorics, or whatever you're working on. But let's go back to the whole title of the story. I'm not sure whether the title of our seminar today is right. The question is, from my point of view, not whether the education has changed forever. The question is whether learning is now speeding up in changing. Why? Well, it was overdue that a couple of educators, to give it a very generic name, find out that especially the millennium generation that asks questions like, we are skeptical of authority, so we need to inspire them, don't tell them how to do it. And they want to be influenced by peers or people who are well known. So they want to be different, but as different as all of the other colleagues. Then very important, personal branding and success, which has to do with the future, have now not giving the whole story an overdue importance, that we have to see that it's not only the lack of the digital literacy of the learners. I think there's a huge amount of, or huge measure of digitally illiteracy amongst the teachers. I don't know, hopefully no German teachers are listening, but they may shoot me. But what about the ability to work with online, whatever it means, asynchronous or synchronous communication? We have seen that a couple of teachers, educators, professors are very much willing to spread their knowledge synchronously or asynchronously. Some others are not. They say, oops, now I'm measurable, because what I'm saying now as Boris is going to be on YouTube tomorrow. So everybody's going to know what I've been saying. Difficult thing. The next thing is, did I reinvent the wheel, or is the content I'm speaking about just a copy of an Addison Wesley book? Can I put it into an online course then, which is spread and maybe even purchased by money? To give you a good example, on career, the career in the past was, I have a university, my university will accredit every course I take at this university, and at the end of the day, I'm going to get a degree. Now, what happened 5 years ago, I had a couple of friends who had children as well, and they said, no, I'm going to Japan, I'm going to take a master class in Japan, and a part of it in marketing, and then I'm going to the States physically. And when I asked, but what about your home university? Are they going to accredit it, what you've been learning over there? The answer was, if they don't, they're not good enough for me, because this is best of brand and best of breed. Now, in the meantime, something maybe you all know about the asynchronous platform Udacity, actually founded by Sebastian Thrun. He, about 6 years ago, said, we have a lousy product. Why? But he measured the dropouts he is having in students. Why did he have dropouts? For a very simple reason. They took the university career and put it online. But the students were not interested in the career. And now, speaking as an employer, actually, I'm not interested in careers anymore. I'm interested in skills. I'm actually interested in competencies. And I find out we are always better in what we know, in terms of better, not better. Lifelong learning has changed to something which my daughter, she's 18 years old, replicates each and every day. If I don't know how to do it, she will never read a manual, go to YouTube. It's fine for whatever, how to nail a picture to the wall. But if it comes to terms of mathematics or foundations in things, languages, I mean, you can learn a lot. I doubt that you will have a good language course from a couple of peers in YouTube, at least not in grammar, maybe in street talking. However, you have to think about, first of all, your customers. Who are they? You have to think about future employers, and employers never ask for careers. Even worse, PhD becomes dangerous because it means double price, and this guy has been working for 10 years, or the lady. So at the end of the day, it's about skills, about fast write-up or whatever size skilling, and the possibility to get the information and my upskilling possibilities at my fingertips. And this is one thing we are facing. So I think learning has changed forever. And the only thing that happened now, the crisis has given the whole story an overdue importance, because we have been able to do that a while ago. But now it's necessary, and everybody looks at it. I mean, nobody's happy about that crisis, but what I'm finding, the window of opportunity for B2B providers like we are has opened in a huge way, because everybody is asking me now, how can we do, how can we share? What we are doing here is literally not what we need to do if we make synchronous classroom communication, because Professor Kyriakos is sharing a screen. So if I want to mention something, actually I'm not seeing anybody here in this list who's participating. I mean, somebody sees, which is good. If we have 200 participants, if everybody would talk, it would be a problem. But as you may see, if I would be a video, you have shut me off. So what we need is new tools. We're working on them. And actually, we have brought out something which is really beautiful, which means synchronous classroom communication on a smart board that will run on each and every device that has a simple web browser, so to speak, something like a TV set. Andrea, you said access is important. I think that even families who might not have high-speed access with laptops and premium computers at home, I doubt that they don't have a modern TV screen and all these TV screens have web browsers. So adapt the technology to the needs and not vice versa. Thank you very much for inviting me. So I'm open to questions or whatever in the hands of Professor Kyriakos. And flipped classroom, that's another story. Absolutely, absolutely yes, because you're telling people what to do and they try to engage afterwards. It would be better if they would have the foundations on their own, self-paced, and then get together in order to talk about what they have learned and how to apply it. If we don't talk about rocket science and getting a PhD at the university. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Boris. Extremely useful, everything that we have heard so far. And I think the more we talk, the more food for thought we have. So it's my turn now to try to enrich a little bit what we have heard and to be more specific. Let's go to the previous one. You can see that when all this COVID-19 crisis started to escalate, it had an effect in especially regarding school closures in 177 countries in the world, nearly the whole globe. This is an amazing impact and an amazing consequence of what actually happened. And if you can see, we're talking about more than 1 billion students and learners impacted. And in this map here, which is taken from the official website of Eurydice from the European Commission, you can see all the different stages regarding the time frame that countries decided to close their higher education institutions. And you can keep from this that it wasn't a unified decision, which means the adaptability that followed was even more difficult. So if we move to the next slide, and this is based to a survey conducted by AACSB, which, as you know, is one of the most prestigious institutions regarding the accreditation of business schools and programs. That impact on certain geographical areas and countries were tremendous, especially in the Middle East, where the 69% of learners there, they had no prior experience with online courses. So I will enhance what Boris commented before, that it's actually the learning that has changed there completely. And I think it's there to stay. And just looking on all these differences, that in Europe, only 20% of people, they had no prior experience, and in the US, 8%. That also demonstrates a lot of other indirect activities behind learning. That has also to do with commercial activities, or with e-shops, or with electronic communication in general. So there are a lot of things behind this as well. Lots of food for thought. Also, regarding the institutions themselves, 79% converted all face-to-face classes to online or virtual platforms during a total suspension of face-to-face activities. That's a huge number. And that is versus the 21% that converted classes only for courses involving students affected by travel restrictions. So obviously the majority grasped this opportunity and actually responded very effectively to this crisis. And it was a time that the debate regarding if technology is our friend or if it's our enemy in the process of learning was not so much important. What was important is to try and cover the needs of our students in a very effective way, because everybody was in a shock. But everybody at the same time responded. And globally, the 51%, half the universities and institutions in the world, they converted successfully all their courses in any kind of virtual format. And you can see here the percentages in Oceania, Middle East, USA, Africa, and Canada, if you want the regional integration on this. So this is amazing. And at the same time, there were some other statistics that are very useful for us to study. For instance, just a couple of years ago, the expectation of students for any course delivery were up to 95% for what we call face-to-face or on-campus teaching, and just 12% of what we call hybrid or blended, if you want, or mixed, and just 1% online. Now that we actually enhanced blended learning, and we can see that we can actually combine online and combine all the benefits of online without abolishing face-to-face and vice versa. We have 0 for online, but a huge increase in 2015 for blended. And we can see now that from 95 we went down to 85 for face-to-face. If we conduct the same survey at the end of 2020 in order to have more results, we will see that this 35% will probably be up to 70% now. And this is what we should keep, that blended learning is maybe the new form or maybe the new mode of learning, and we shouldn't even distinguish anymore and put labels and categorize these modes. Is not so important, as platforms themselves are not important. There will always be platforms, some more sophisticated than others. It's the methods, then the methodology of learning and of the actual teaching and didactics that are the important aspects in this. So people now are more important to what they will actually learn, how they transfer this to their future professional aspirations, and if they can afford this. And if you see at the next graph that outcomes matter more than cost, we can see that the career preparation is the most important variable for the students and for future employees. And blended learning and online learning and all these alternative modes, they actually give this to them to a maximum extent. Why? Because they also offer a great flexibility in learning. And we should always have this in mind. And with all this new learning environment, with all these new initiatives, the adaptability of institutions and of learners themselves, they have brought this discussion to what is going to be the university of the future. Is it already there? You can see in this slide, that's my avatar, myself actually, my digital representation of myself, outside my office, where I actually meet a lot of my students virtually using their avatars themselves in my virtual office for doing my office hours. And especially the millennial generation that are very accustomed to what we call gamification and gaming in general, they found this astonishing. So apart from being something unique and something innovative, it is also very close to their generation interests as well. So you can have this kind of interaction even in a virtual environment. So this is also integrated in some of our courses and on our lectures, and the students are thrilled. I'm doing this for the last 10 years actually, and I have received a lot of positive feedback from students. But imagine now that we also have to use this during the COVID-19 crisis. And at this point, I also want to ask Andrea's and Boris' opinion about the university of the future. Do you think that we have reached a level that a new mode or a new norm is around the corner, or how is it going to be the university in its traditional form or in any other form in the next 5 or 10 years? Andrea and Boris, on you.
Andrea, please go ahead.
Ladies first.
Well, thank you. I think I totally agree with what Boris had mentioned before, that it will be a lot more diverse. Yeah, students will have a stronger idea of what they want to achieve. Hopefully, it's true what Boris said. It's not so much about certificates and career paths anymore. It's more about skills, and employers are looking for a skill set and not certificates. And therefore, I think the future will hopefully be a more modular degree that students can be can more pick of what they want to do and do it in different universities, and then hopefully sort of have a set of skills that prepares them for the job they will do. I think that is definitely something I feel is coming, is definitely something that universities are working on here. But also what has been mentioned about learning has changed. And I agree, learning has changed significantly, but not so much for teachers, unfortunately. I think there is, it doesn't matter what, maybe primary teachers are the exception, but there is still a long way to go for teachers to relearn how to learn and how to teach. And I think there, what you've shown here, I think is an amazing way of doing it. But I think most of the teachers are worried about doing it in a different way, and they need support. They need more training on letting go. Yeah, letting go and give more responsibility to the students. And there's one thing I didn't entirely agree with Boris, and that was, yeah, I'm sure all kids are really good at watching YouTube videos, but do they actually understand that they have learned something? Yeah, not when it comes to hitting a nail, but a more abstract concept. And I think that's something even students have to learn, to measure their progress and to understand where they're at. As I don't know who it was, but one of you said they all learn with a different pace, but they also have to understand where they're at in that progress. And I think that's something we have to implement in the education system and also in the university system. And on how do we give feedback to students so they understand that they have actually made progress or where they have to go next. And I think the teacher student communication and interaction will always be important. The worry teachers in every school system always have is, will I be replaced? Is that avatar replacing me and I have nothing to do? I think that's a worry we do not need to have. Teachers will always be very important in the learning progress, and they will have a bit of a different role, I agree, but they will be still a centerpiece of the whole progress.
Thank you very much, Andrea. One last thing before I ask Boris' opinion. The last thing that will change also for teachers are the salaries, unfortunately. So, Boris, on you, what do you think the university of the future will be?
First of all, don't have to disagree. YouTube is. Second of all, Andrea, yeah, I'm completely with you. I mean, without foundations, not even a further pace in learning. Third of all, I'm making business out of content for education and according platforms, which means nobody's going to pay me if the content is not top of the pops. And supposedly, Professor Kyriakos, you will not put out a masterclass and whatever without having the top lecturers, best of breed, best of brand, and supposedly with some practical background, because as you know, students are not learning for their academic career, but for life. This is why I said always better, because our world changes a little bit faster than it changed in IT 25 years or 30 years ago when I made my diploma. So actually no disagreement, sorry, maybe I put that wrong. But there is certain sources of knowledge and information which is not trustworthy. We have to face because it's there. Second issue, what about the university of the future? Well, my perception in the last years was a lot of those universities that asked us to cater for their courses. We're currently developing 8 master classes or master courses, entire master courses in 8 disciplines for one customer, European customer, a really huge university. And what I found out along this offer they're preparing a blended learning offer, but for a completely different reason. It's not in order to be digitized and have the ability. No, the reason is a different one. There's so many people booking into modules of those courses, as I said before, in order to get skills that they can scale up. And that was mentioned before by, I think by you, Professor Kyriakos. They can cater for much more students as they could before. Some people are working and they want to upskill. They cannot disappear in a university for a face-to-face class. So how do I reduce by a good transcription, not like me now talking be in the video, with a good transcription into atomic parts of knowledge that somebody can stop at the bus station and get at least a little bit more of progress by making a little unit, a little learning unit or whatever in order to achieve the next step in learning goals. So it's not only the universities, I think all educational institutions have to think about whether they're going to remain dinosaurs. If they don't interact, if Professor Kyriakos would not make, as a dean, as far as I've understood, interconnections with international institutions saying, whomever studies with me has the opportunity to go there, and double badges and stuff like that are going to be far more important in the future. Now we can't travel, but this is going to come back again. People want experience. People want to travel. People want to see the world. And this is not only a matter of motivating the teachers. I think at the end of the day, as you say, salary motivates everybody. For me, it's deliver the best or you don't get the job. It's the same for private universities and private colleges. And those, well, actually you don't want to move because the money comes out of the ATM, are history. Maybe not tomorrow, but I'm quite sure that the way of international learning and exchange is going to, not only by virtual classrooms or stuff like that, but simply moving people around the world is going to change a lot. Sorry,
yeah.
A little bit lengthy.
That's true, Boris. And I'm taking this opportunity to also to comment. I'm driving an initiative for the last 5 years, which is called the Global Degree. So for me, this is also associated to the University of the Future. And I think in the near future, we will be able to build our degrees like Lego bricks. So imagine that you are an architect, and at a certain point of your career, you also want to study engineering, civil engineering, which they have a lot of common courses together. You should be able just to transfer your existing old architecture modules towards an engineering degree and also get this kind of education as well on top of what you have already. So it's an open process. And then it doesn't matter if you attend the course as a blended learning, with a blended learning courses mode, or face-to-face, or even completely online. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter if you stop your studies for 1 year and then you resume. So all these different modes and all these different norms, they can fit into a new model. And as I said before, the model is important, not the platforms, not all the structures. And the essence is that we need to be flexible and we need to be open and think out of the box and always be ready to learn. As you probably know, and I have a newborn son, and he's just 4 months old. And I know, and I have read some surveys, that the 60% at least of the professions that he should think of adopting in the future, they have not been invented yet. So it's amazing. I had the chance to make a cooperation for a BSBI in the last few days regarding online libraries and giving access to our students to about 30,000 online journals. And I remember when I had to do my PhD a couple of decades in the past, but not that long, that I needed a book, and the university had to actually create a whole route of different institutions to bring this book to me to study from the University of Chicago in the US. So imagine what are the capabilities that we're having now. All we need is to blend them in the proper module. Maybe this is a global degree, University of the Future, another mode, but for the first time, technology and even crises like this one have created a new methodology by inception. So we should better try and bring this to the next level. And for me, it is also a good opportunity and try to think how we can use all these innovative things and all these challenges that we encountered in the last few months in a more productive way. And by saying this, I think we can go to our questions and answers if we have some. And if we have some questions, I can see them in our chat box. So, Andrea, how do you feel for the near future? What do you think is going to happen, let's say, in the next academic year? What are your prospects?
May I add something to your question?
Of course, of course.
Andrea would be really interested in languages, foundations, grammar, everything. What about life? Would it be possible to do it completely self-paced, asynchronous online, or is still living and learning a language in life important, just in order to get that rounded up? Sorry.
Yeah, I could talk about that one for another 2 hours at least. I think at the Goethe-Institut we have experience with teaching German for 70 years now, and one thing we have learned is that it is really difficult to do that on your own, self-paced, without a teacher who helps you along. And I'm not talking about telling you what adjective endings are. I think that's something students can easily, through flipped classrooms, find out themselves. But what they do need is a structured way of approaching how to learn a language. Yeah, this is I think for second language learning a huge difference to other subjects. You have to learn in really small steps, yeah, to be able to maintain vocabulary, to be able to then put it into practice. You have to work on every skill, and you have to be able to speak, and this is where the classroom setting comes in and where the teacher comes in. I think it will be personally, I don't think that there is a future of language learning where you just do it on your own, or you just use some kind of app to help you translate things. I think there's a lot more to it. As we can see, we're an international setting here. There is a lot of intercultural knowledge that comes with learning a language, and you need support from your class, but also from a teacher to be able to be successful faster than you can be if you do it all on your own. I mean, there's always exceptions, of course, people who are very talented and can do it all by themselves just by reading a book, but generally I think a small guided, other than in other subjects where you can just give out more information, it has to be very detailed and very structured, so you don't lose motivation. You know, when you learn your first language, your native language, you don't realize how much work it was, you know, for your son. Congratulations, by the way. It takes years for him to acquire a language, and as let's say older humans, we think it just has to happen like this, and it won't. You know, you got a lot of support when you learned your native language, and the same applies to a second language. And I think The blended learning approach here is a perfect way of doing it because it gives you enough time to learn at your own pace, but still have the support of a teacher when you need it. And for your question, Professor, I think the school system here will have to significantly change. There will be, at least at the East Coast, from what I've heard, there will be no normal teaching in the fall. Most schools are already discussing on how to transfer everything online, or at least have it so that only part of the class can come in, and that this will probably not change until the end of this year 2020. And because of the length of this crisis, I think it will have a lasting impact on how we teach and how we interact with students. So I think although it is a terrible crisis, I think we actually can take it as a fantastic opportunity to improve how we learn and teach. And personally, I think I've been working on that topic for a long time now. I think this is a boost in some way, or we also need it to do more in that direction, to integrate online teaching more into our, let's call it, traditional ways of teaching.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Boris. Any last thoughts on this?
Yeah, you said something beautiful. Actually, I never heard that. Not on the scale you're claiming to do it. Global degrees. Wow. I was just on double badges, and that's tough enough. What happened to Europe? The bachelor and the master. Some are happy, the others are not, as European member countries. But this was somehow getting one shape and form for the form the content will take. If you go online with content, it might be okay for medicine for 5 years. Me as an IT guy, if I don't go into a programming lab each and every year, I'm completely outdated in 2 years. Which means if we put something online, and I just had the chance to write an article for the Federal Ministry of Research and Education in Germany, because they push us in front and saying training made in Germany. We don't give you money, but we give you fame. We push you. It's not about platforms. Software is not the platform. The content is software itself, because it ages. And we have to think about how to maintain this and how to make sure that we're always up to date. So the global degree idea is beautiful. Whomever I could help with them, I have a lot of partners and customers who are asking actually for that kind of collaboration. So please feel free to address me, but this is a second story. Sorry, that was.
I can actually send you the project. That thanks very much, and I think you will find it interesting. We can take it from there, because this is how all initiatives should move forward. So at this point, I would like to thank both of you. It was wonderful. We had a lot of new things and different perspectives, and we all come from different areas, but from the same environment, and hope to have the opportunity to meet with you also in person and discuss this further on. And I also want to thank all our participants and hope that you will all join us in one of the next series of BSBI Dialogue. So thank you all very much for your participation.
Thank you for inviting me. Thanks a lot.
Same for me. Thank you very much. And whomever, personally or virtually, let's keep in contact, and please keep going with that kind of form. It's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye to all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.